Microsoft Flight Simulator is just days away from takeoff, and if you saw my earlier preview video, you'll know that there are few games in 2020 that have impressed me more than this, so I consider myself quite lucky to have the chance to chat to two of the minds behind the game, Jörg Newman, who is the head of Microsoft Flight Simulator, and Marshall Bassard, who is the lead software engineer at Asobo Studios. Between them, they are steering the direction of the game and making its incredible technology happen. So I chatted to them about all kinds of things, from where you draw the line in building a simulated Earth to the potential for flying around the planet as it existed in the past. In my earlier video, I also asked you to suggest places you wanted to see in Flight Simulator, as a lot of this interview is about theoretical stuff that is quite hard to show in the flesh, so I've used those suggestions to show off the game throughout this video. So whether you're here for the answers or just to see the sights, I hope you enjoy it. I've also listed those locations in the description. And if you struggle with the interview audio, I've added full subtitles for those as well. Due to a technical mishap, I don't actually have my audio from the chat, so I'm going to have to relay my questions as we go along. To kick things off, I asked who the game is for. A lot of the trailers have focused on the pure fantasy of seeing the world, something with mass appeal. But obviously the depth of the simulation clearly appeals to simmers. Do they think the game can speak to both crowds?
We are making a sim for simmers. There's no question about it. As you heard on Friday, this is a serious simulation product. But I think the other part of that answer is the dream of flight is a universal dream, and I think like lots of people who see the trailers, I can speak for myself. You sort of rediscover your love for the planet, and so flying as a method to experience it from a different perspective, I think is something very shared. So that leads you with, there's a thing that a lot of people have a lot of respect for. Flying seems complicated, maybe even risky or something. But then it's so beautiful, and you really want to try it. So I think the core of the kernel of what we're doing is a sim. But Martial, maybe you can speak a little bit to the other part of why we think this is also going to be accessible for others.
So yes, because so one of the mantra we got was no pilot left behind. The idea was to talk to the hardcore simmers, because we wanted to bring a very simulation dedicated to hardcore simmers with a lot of computation, and we went that far that we've got like the proper shadow reflection of the atmosphere. So we spend so much time to be as accurate as possible on every single topic. But it doesn't mean that we don't want to speak to the one that just want to enjoy the beauty of the Earth. And when we started this project, it was obvious for the team that to understand exactly what flying is, we had to take lessons and eventually being graduated. So the first experience we got when flying was, wow, that was not that complicated. I almost landed. And why did this happen? It was because we were flying with an instructor, and this guy, he was knowing so much his plane that he was letting us doing the stuff, and even with having us noticing it, he was doing every single complex stuff. So we decided basically to take that design of having an instructor. So we brought that to the game. So if you put all the assistances on, you will have basically an instructor very next to you. It will be very easy to take off, very easy to land, very easy to do the maneuvers you need for just enjoy the beauty of the world. And that's basically, the simulation runs in my home. Obviously, with the COVID situation we had, we had to work at home. So my son, which is really not a technical guy, he's more is very dedicated to history. Doesn't want to understand. He's not an engineer like I am. I'm fine with that. Don't worry. but he was taking like a lot of time to just enjoy the beauty of you, and because his fan of history was actually picking of historical places to see where the battlefield happened and what was topography of places, because it's so accurate that he can enjoy that. And my daughter, she was more like, let's go to Bahamas, let's go visit the pyramids, let's go. So as a hardcore teamer, we've brought all the layers needed, so you will enjoy. And I do think we also added some new layers that has been never seen in the world of simulation. And on the other end, I do think that we've got you can just take an Xbox pad on a PC and easily take off and just discover what the world looks like, and you have a peaceful and enjoyable flight upon every places of the world. And because the tourism is a bit complicated these days, so you can enjoy the beauty of it.
Considering that Asobo's background is in games, they made last year's A Plague Tale for example, I wonder if making a sim is very different to making a game. Are things that are valued in pure gaming entertainment and simulators quite different?
I would say no, because at Asobo we always had the will to, I don't know what, how do you say that in English? We are passionate of technologies. We are really passionate of innovations. Like since the very beginning, when we did our first really prototype that was sold, it was Fuel. It was all about innovation. When we started to work with Microsoft, it was about doing the first game for HoloLens, and not HoloLens, sorry, for Kinect. Yeah. And it was also having I do remember of jump for the first time with Buzz Lightyear, and Buzz was jumping. Guys, as a developer, it was a great moment. And after that, we did this HoloLens products series, and it was so enjoyable as a technician, like to follow the development of HoloLens. It has been fantastic, and I thanks Microsoft for that. And even when we did awesome other stuff, like you may have heard about A Plague Tale, for instance. And even for The Plague Tale, we spent a lot of time for designing these rats. I can spend Jog knows. Yeah, I know. Yes. So I did the prototype of rats, and even with that kind of gameplay, we always wanted to find something new. So when Jog talked to us about these flight simulations, so my first impression is like, wow, this is huge, because obviously you see, okay, we've got to recreate the world. I know that we are going to have being, but on top of that, we will have to add more details, and then the lightning, and then the clouds, and then understand the world of the aviations, and to be able to do some simulations and the air masses, and it's like, wow, it's like opening a box full of toys and stuff to do. So I do think that it matches really the DNA of what we like to do. So it's no changes for us. It was just new stuff, new technology to discover. So we embrace that with pleasure, I would say.
I was also curious about how they decided the level of curated content. Microsoft Flight Simulator has landing tasks and brief tutorials, but with this eventually coming to Xbox consoles too, is there a chance to expand on that for an audience maybe less familiar with simulations?
Yeah, that was you're exactly right. So basically, the initial product, what we're doing right now is a sim for simmers. That will most likely attract a bunch of what we call newcomers, simply because it's pretty and people love the planet. But as you go over to something more of a dedicated gaming console, I think gamers are more used to having more structure. So we talk about this a lot. We actually talked about it quite a bit also for the initial PC release. We just ended up with the structure that we are shipping now, which is these landing challenges and bush trips and tutorials. But we'll take this further carefully, because what you don't want to do is over stress a campaign. There is no such thing as a campaign, really. Like we have 30 aircraft. We're going to have more aircraft. There's all kinds of jobs and all kinds of things you can do in the world of aviation. And given that we want to stay authentic and realistic, we actually have to embrace that. And what do people do with planes? So that's actually the filter that we're applying right now. What are planes being used for? What are people enjoying with planes? How can we, and worldwide, how can we bring that worldwide for people to actually now have structure? But it's like baby structures, if you think about it that way. But there will be hopefully everywhere. So we're working on that a lot. Nothing to announce right today, but it's one of the things that is important.
Next up, I wanted to drill into some of the mad details of the world. One number that jumped out at me was that the game features 37,000 manually edited airports. Is there an entire department dedicated to adjusting the grass airstrips of the world? How does this process actually work?
Elbow grease.
It's not a department, but we've got a team dedicated to that. So let's be honest. On these 37,000 airports, it's like for I would say at least 2/3 of them, it's just a field, right? So what we did is we've got a tool that's at the list of all the airports in the world, and that keeps the information if it has been edited or not. We also add a classification upon the complexity of it. And regarding its complexity, we add several pipelines. So I will just, for example, take the two extreme point of view. When it's just a field, then we've got a tool that opens the big map situation with an aerial pictures. You can basically see that in one of the video we showed. And then you just have to pick the end of the track, the other end, the two extreme parts of the track, a line, you select the width. For most part of the smallest airports, that's all what you need to do, and then it's exported and it's joining the database we've got. And on the opposite side of the world, you've got these gigantic airports like you can get like Heathrow, and on this part it's really embed stuff. So there's a raw production of buildings, and it takes a huge amount of time to reproduce buildings, every parking spots, every light. So it's very, very accurate. So you've got these two extreme point of view, and there's this in middle situation in which it's a little bit more complicated, but this tool, it also allows you to draw the parking places and all the structures needed for an airport. And at the end, because we've been working on that topic for more than half a year now, at the end you've got the possibility to have this edition on 37,000.
But to add to just a little, this was, but it is a big task, and we actually hired 2 external companies to help us. One was what I would call more of a generic outsourcing company, and they just had a bunch of people. They handled the very simple airstrips, as we call them. And then we worked with Orbex, which is a specialist group. They made hundreds of airports. They're kind of famous in the flight sim industry, so they had a dedicated team, and they still have a dedicated team, and we're going to keep working with them. It's been a really good collaboration. And then there's, on top of those 2, there's a team at Asobo to handle the most complex airports. So, but it's been good tools. Like, the tool is elegant, and that's super important, right? But anytime you have 30,000 anythings, right, you better have a good tool. But then we also got ourselves some help.
And speaking of insane details, where do they draw the line in their simulated world? I was thinking recently if they could add accurate bird migration to really accentuate the seasons.
Ah! Oh, baby. Yes. Yeah, so this is there's been some debate. There's there's things that we call the living world, which are things like I think of it as as like ships driving on the oceans, or cars being appropriately modeled. If there's like a traffic jam somewhere in Los Angeles, do we want to have that? And then even down to animals, and so yeah, I was actually probably on the far right. I wanted to do it all. There's giraffes and all kinds of things, and but at some point we had to focus on the most important thing related to aviation, which is what we did. Those other things are, I will never let go. Jan knows this.
Yeah.
But we need to. But they, honestly, like the way we think of our feature set in the future is we have our own roadmap of things that we think ought to be done, but then we are very carefully listening to what the community is saying, and we capture all that, and then we restack our backlog all the time. And those things, if I'm the only one who says I really would love hippos in the Nile, then the hippos in the Nile will come late. Maybe never, but I think late.
Well,
but yeah, I mean, we talked about butterflies, and
Mm-hmm.
you can go pretty deep. Martial remembers the conversation.
Microsoft Flight Simulator makes a distinction between 400 cities built from accurate photogrammetry data and 50,000 locations that are procedurally generated cities. I asked the team how much tweaking is involved with those procedural cities.
So we are using machine learning everywhere it's possible. So basically when it's about putting some generic buildings, when I say generic, it's like a building that uses a usual structure, even if at Paris, for instance, you won't get the same kind of building that you will get in Bamako or even London or Seattle or something. So we've got a grammar on each city, and these grammars helps you to. So we've got also some database that says where the buildings are and where they have been recognized, the streets and everything. And when we are finding a building, it's described, it's generated using a grammar that's defined per location. And then you've got exactly what you've seen on this presentation about these typical Parisian buildings. That won't be the same in Berlin and everywhere else. And on top of that, there are some buildings that you will never generate with any kind of procedures. Let's choose the Eiffel Tower, for instance. If there's nothing like it, we won't do a generic creation of the Eiffel Tower. So this is uncraft. This is an object that has been created and put here. So basically on major cities like that, you will find for Paris, you've got the Sacré-Cœur you've seen, there's the l'Arc de Triomphe, I think there's the Opera too, and the Eiffel Tower. And when you're flying over the area now, with everything's generative building and these generative buildings with and these POIs, well, it's obvious you're in Paris, and more important than that, when you do some VFR flight, you are able to see all the structure of the city, and you know exactly where you are. You're not lost, and then it's up to you to fly. I hope
it's going to be an interesting, because photogrammetry, it just depends when the city was constructed. Because basically you have planes flying overhead, they're taking lots of photographs, and then it's basically this 3D point cloud. And sometimes there's actually, like for example in Seattle, we have a new bridge. Our old bridge was sinking. So we basically in the real world there's a new bridge. In the photogrammetry that we have, there was actually the old bridge. In the satellite imagery and the vector data that we use, there's a new bridge. So we actually have to now sort of marry gently the two realities, and it's going to be fascinating.
What is being tracked in real time? During this year's lockdown, for example, there's been a decrease in air pollution, and we saw these amazing images of industrial cities being cleared of smog. Would something like that also be reflected in the game?
So yes, I'm not saying that it has been done yet, but it's definitely something we can do, because we've got the pollution being simulated with the aerosols, and it depends on the traffic we've got. But for the moment, we don't have the real-time traffic. The traffic with the roads, they are generated regarding the place and the time of the day. Like at night, you won't get that much vehicles, but like at 5 in the afternoon, it will be like a giant traffic jams. So it's the kind of data we have so far, but it's something we are thinking of, like plugging the real life data.
Yeah, Matthew, so I had that exact same thought this weekend, because I read some article about how India, there's India, China, Chinese cities, how blue it is now, that you can see everything. And so I wrote myself a note, because we're working with this weather company. They're basically hardcore scientists. They're called Media Blue.
Yes.
And I was actually going to write them an email saying, can we get the air pollution data from the various cities? And because technically the engine can do it. If we had it, the engine can totally, put smog in or not. So we want to do it. Totally.
Yes, and that's the beauty of the unified engine we've got. Is you just have to put the data, and the rendering will automatically adapt to that.
I also wondered if they could use historic data to let us explore and see the Earth as it once was.
Yeah, we talked about that too. As a matter of fact, we talked about it in the context of going back to the beginnings of flight, which is now, 150 plus years ago. There's certain things that are going to be somewhat challenging. Like all the cities look different. The forests have totally. Right now we use satellite imagery across the planet, and obviously there weren't any. So at some point, then you go into like old, hand-drawn maps and try to figure out where the forests were and stuff. Like it's one of those things. It's probably towards the end of our next 10-year roadmap. I'd love to try it. But it's tough.
I then asked the team to clarify what data streaming adds to the game. If you didn't know, an internet connection can be used to stream in more accurate details. Does this mean you are at a substantial disadvantage if you don't use it, or have a poor internet connection?
So from a streamer point of view, it won't change that much. Because there's two ways of flying. There's the IFR, in which you're flying with your instrument. Obviously, you don't need to see even what's going on outside, and you can be like in the middle of the cloud, and it doesn't bother you. And on the other end, there's the VFR. And for the VFR, you are not looking at every single field, but you use as a reference all the roads, the major buildings, and the rivers and stuff like that, and everything's in it. Even if you are flying offline, it might be more complicated if you want to do some tourism, because even I do think that when you're high enough, you can tell the difference. But if you want to fly very close to an area, like let's say the Bassin d'Arcachon, which is right next to us, and which is a beautiful place. I know this place by heart, even when flying. It's where I bring people when they want to fly with me. And it's obviously when you go offline, you've got the geographical part, but not the same beauty of it. So it depends of your usage, but there's still a way to dump that, to put that in a cache system, and if for instance, you want to prepare a flight, and after that that you will be offline, there's still a way to pre-download all the areas.
During our preview presentation, the team talked about how their model of the world can be updated in 2 weeks, but what does this actually mean for us? Is it just an internal tool, or will we be downloading an entire globe update every 2 weeks?
Basically, we can update the world in 2 weeks. Basically, we run machine learning algorithms on top of the satellite data to do tree placement and building placement and all that stuff. In reality, after having thought about it for quite a while, the world gets updated. The Bing world gets updated quite frequently and quite randomly. Basically, they have data providers, they fly airplanes overhead, and once that data gets made available, it just launches on Bing. But you can't tell, because it's literally like, hey, 10 kilometers in the middle of Australia were just updated. And literally we don't even know. There's sort of an API and you can actually tell, but it's not consumable. So what we said instead, we're going to do these regions of Earth, and we're going to update them in a more comprehensive manner, meaning we put real brain power behind it. We get for example, an entire new height field. Maybe we acquire a bunch of new satellite imagery, and then we build airports, and we make some structured missions like landing challenges, and really make that place feel, and then we also add some POIs and whatnot, make it feel like we've updated a section of the Earth, and the plan is that we do that every 2 to 3 months. Yeah, the other ones, the you don't really want to build trees all the time. The world doesn't change that quickly. But we'll do it whenever it's meaningful, and if there's something that really fundamentally changed, then we'll run an update.
As our time ran out on the interview, I asked both Marshall and Jorg where people should fly first when they get Microsoft Flight Simulator on the 18th of August release day. Here's what they told me.
Home. Just home. Just go home. See what it looks like. That or where you grew up, something like that. Something meaningful to you, I think, is where I would go. Mathieu, where would you go?
It's exactly the same. It's the first stuff we did. So it's not even an advice. It's what people just do. Yeah. Everybody has the same dream, just flying over the places is not a must. To have this point of view, I don't know. When I was young, there were these pilots sending. Funding their license by just taking pictures of some areas and sending that to people, and people were pleased to have just a picture of their house seen from above. Here you've got the chance to see all the area of where you've been living, where you live. And after that, in the second position, Bordeaux, for sure.
And that's where we left the team, dreaming of hippos in the Nile and the green and pleasant lands of Bordeaux. If only all interviews ended on such a dreamy note. I hope you enjoyed our little chat and that my terrible flying didn't spoil your enjoyment of the sights that accompanied this interview. To be fair, a lot of it was on autopilot so I could focus on the camera framing. As mentioned, I've got another video that goes into real depth on the features of Microsoft Flight Simulator, so if you are still puzzling about whether to pick it up on the 18th of August, why not check that one out? Remember that it will also be included on Xbox Game Pass for PC, so if you don't want to spend the full price on Steam, that's a really cheap way to dip in, and to see if your PC can actually handle it. If you enjoyed this video, just say something nice about it in the comments, and don't worry about all the other YouTube guff. We'll hopefully see you again soon. Bye for now.